Hello, welcome to Liam's Library. You know, I was bored the other day. Watching Ray Donovan wasn't cutting it. Watching American Dad wasn't cutting it. So I went over to my bookshelf and I needed to read something that I'd read before, but just that I wanted to read, nothing that's on my big list of me just trying to get through. Something I really would enjoy sitting down all fucking day and just reading all day. So, on my top shelf, I found Full Dark, No Stars by Stephen King. It's an anthology book that came out in 2009, I'm pretty sure, with 3 short novels in it and a short story. Novellas and a short story. And I thought, what a great idea. Now, I've already reviewed the first novella in this collection. What's it called? 1922. I did a book to film review on that, so I won't be talking about that, even though I did reread it. So I started from the start and I just read every single one and it was a great day. But let me tell you, there's something about Full Dark, No Stars by Stephen King that it will turn your stomach. It will fuck with you. So it's not like, some fun supernatural shit. There are 2 supernatural stories in there and the other 2 aren't supernatural. But they're not fun. They're very dark. First time I read this, it was when it first came out. So 2009. Might have been 2010. Let's say 2010 to be safe. I read it while I was working on night shift on the rail. And every time I got to the end of one of these stories, I'd just be like, fuck, like that's fucking dark, man. Like more than dark, like that's fucking horrific, And I've been reading Stephen King for years. 20 plus years I've been reading Stephen King. And, I've read everything from killer clowns to, pets that come back from the dead. I always use those 2. But they're great examples to, time-eating meatball aliens in the Langoliers. All sorts of fucked up shit. There is some really dark stuff in all of his books. Even his sort of softer ones like Stand By Me and can't really say Apt Pupil's a softer one. But do you know what I mean? Like you're reading Stephen King, so you're going to be in for, some scary, dark horror, some dark passages in the weight of the human heart or its surrounds. So when I'd get to the end of all these stories, I'd be a bit extra fucked up. Like fuck. And I thought to myself, fuck, am I getting a bit too old to be reading this fucking dark horror stuff? Because these books fucked with me. Then you get to the very end of all 4 books, and Stephen King's written a little afterward in there saying, you might have, like straight away, first sentence, you might have found some of these stories hard to read in places. I also found them hard to write in places. But that was on purpose. These stories are meant to do that. So I kind of felt relieved. I was like, oh, okay, cool. It wasn't me just turning into a pussy. It was like, he really meant to fucking shock you with these books. So that's the intro, right? So Full Dark, No Stars as a collection is a great one to pick up. And I'll mention something else cool about that at the end. But let's get straight on to the review. And today's review is Big Driver. It is the second story in the book, and it is a novella. Just over 100-something pages long. And it's not my kind of topic that I normally like in a horror story. Let's get into it. It's about a woman named Tess. She's a novelist, and she's been a novelist for years and years. She's not the most successful novelist, but it pays the bills. It's the Willow Grove Knitting Society. So she's got like a crime-solving bunch of old ducks that sit around and in their knitting club, and they get to solve really like PG sort of mysteries. It's for old ladies and housewives that don't want like blood and guts and murder and fucking rape, which is going to be a theme in this book. I apologize. Now, I can't stand that shit. I'd rather watch a whole bunch of people get killed than any one poor woman suffer a fucking horrible thing like sexual abuse. Big Driver, however, is based on sexual abuse and sexual violence. Fuck. And there's 2 bits in there that fucking made me so sick I wanted to fucking cry. But let's get into it. So Tess, she receives an email from this woman who lives in this sort of a small town, saying, we would love you to come to our library and be the author for that day and talk about your books. You've got lots of fans that love your Willow Grove Knitting Society books, and we'd be happy for you to talk to us all about it. And she realizes some other author got dropped off that line, so she's just kind of a second choice. So she does. So she decides to drive there. Now, Tess is really cool. You meet the main character. It's all about Tess and her little quirks. She's got this cool quirk where her cat has its own voice, and she'll talk in the voice of her cat. So she lives alone with her animal, but she makes up voices for the things in her life so that she has more conversation in her life, and that's how she just lives her life. So her cat's name is Tom, and it's got its own voice. Oh no, the cat's name's something else. But her GPS in her car, like as soon as she gets in, she loves driving everywhere. That's a big part of it. Like she loves driving everywhere. Her GPS, excuse me, has a name. And it'll be like, where do you want to drive today, Tess? And she'll give it a voice, like as if it's saying more than that. But when you're reading it, you're like, okay, this is Tess just saying this stuff to herself. Obviously it is. And it's cool. Like it works really well. She drives to this library and she gives her speech. And she does really well, and they pay her, I think it's like $1,000, you know, which comes in handy, because like I said, she's not a big paid writer. And then as she's leaving, this big butchy woman, who's the one who invited her up there in the first place, says, oh, listen, you know, if you want to get back on the highway, it'll cut like, you know, 20 Ks out of your drive, if you take this route. Oh, just, you know, type it straight into your GPS there. You know, it just cuts through everything. And Tess is a sucker for a good shortcut. And that's, you know, in this book, Stephen King, you know, he's like famous last words, you know, like everything wouldn't have happened if I just hadn't have taken that fucking shortcut. And it's scary, man. It's scary. So it's like, you know something's going to happen. She keeps kind of mentioning that her whole life is changed by this shortcut. And of course it is. Now, I'm not going to kill this story for you because it's such a good one to read, and it's not that old. It's only 11 years old. So she takes the shortcut, and as she rounds the corner, there's all this wood and bric-a-brac, you know, just shit all over the road, and she has to suddenly brake and screech off into the ditch. And she just misses it, but a big bit of wood with all these nails sticking out of it gets caught in her tire and pops it. Fuck. And she sits there, fuck, what am I going to do? Like, good on you, Tess. Like, and you know what? Fuck you, lady who gave me the idea for the shortcut. Now I'm fucked. A car goes past and doesn't even stop, just goes past all the shit and just keeps going. She's like, yeah, well, fuck you too, asshole. Now all of a sudden, this fucking disgusting blue pickup truck rocks up. And this man gets out. And he's a big man. He's like 6'8". He's huge, man. Not just a big guy, a fucking huge guy. And, you know, he's got this dirty old hat on his head, and he stops, and he's like, oh, shit, are you all right? You know, and she's like, no, because what she was doing while he pulled up was she was removing all the stuff from the road, noticing that all the bits of wood had big, long nails in it. When this guy pulls up, you know, he's like, oh, I'll change your tyre, no probs. And she's like, oh, thank God, you know, a decent human being. He changes her tyre, and she decides, like, she'll shut his door for him because he left it open. And as she does, she looks into the tray of the ute, and it's full of bits of wood with fucking nails hanging out of it. And just for a second, you know, her heart quickens up, and as she turns around, the big driver's there. And he's just dwarfing her. He's so fucking huge. And then, even as you're reading it, you're scared for her, man. And he says rapey shit, and he knocks her the fuck out. And then she wakes up later in this dingy old building. Now, this building, out the front, has this old sign. It's like an old service station. And on it, it's got this old half rubbed off logo, which is, you like it likes you. She's trying to work out, like, she kind of remembers that as an ad slogan. What was that an ad for? But in true Stephen King form, this is this bizarre reference that just keeps flowing along in her head and just becomes a part of the story. You like it likes you. Whatever the fuck that means. You know, that's what she even thinks. This guy drags her into this building, bashes her so fucking bad, and I hate this shit. It's probably why I'll never read it again. I've done it twice now, that's enough. And he fucking horribly fucking rapes her. And, you know, it's not like a Richard Lehman book where you can tell Richard Lehman is getting off by writing the fucking rape scene. It's a Stephen King book, and you can tell it's hard for King to write the rape scene because he doesn't really write them that often. You can tell he doesn't like it. Like myself, I don't fucking like it. You can make it horrible, but don't give me no fucking details. And you don't, but it's fucking horrible. And so she kind of wakes up and starts screaming, and he bashes her some more. Then she wakes up again and he's walking around naked in this fucking thing and he's singing Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones in this high squealing voice. And he's just terrifying. And the scene is fucking morbid, man. Fucking morbid. And then she wakes up again with his hands around her throat and he's choking her to death and she blacks right out. Next thing, she wakes up again and he's carrying her and it's dark now and he's carrying her into the fucking woods. And he puts her down and he looks at her and she's trying to play dead. Her throat is fucked. She feels dead anyway. She's shattered, blood everywhere down her legs and she's just so fucked and bashed. It's fucking horrible. And she's playing dead and she's thinking like, there's no way he's going to believe that I'm dead. You know, he's going to fucking choke me again and I will be dead. The best thing I can do is just play the best dead I've ever played. And so she does. And he jams her into this culvert that goes under the road. Into this culvert, which is a pipe that runs under a road. And he's watching her. And then she hears him get up and leave. Hears him get in the truck and then the truck drive off. But she just waits and waits and waits, thinking it's a trick, it's a trick, it's a trick. When she finally opens her eyes, the moonlight is casting this sickly glow over everything. And she's in this disgusting culvert, looking out that way, waiting for her time to crawl out. And then she looks that way. And this bit fucked me the first time I read it. Not so much the second time. I thought it, doesn't matter, but the culvert is filled with, like, dead women. Not filled, like, there's 2 or 3 women in there in various stages of decomposition. And when I first read that sentence, like all the dead bodies next to her, and she looks at it and, you know, she's the new dead body jammed into this fucking culvert in the middle of nowhere. That was dark for me, man. That was heavy, man. So, Jesus fucking Christ, Stephen. And anyway, so that's it. So she crawls out and it takes her hours. She's walking around in the dark. She's walking around. Every time she sees headlights, she hides in the bush. But she's so bashed, you know, she doesn't have a brain injury, but her head, you know, she's woozy, man. She's been bashed by a fucking very big man. And she's nearly 50, you know what I mean? She's not a young woman. She's fucked. So I'm going to cut this down because I don't want to spoil it for you. But Full Dark, No Stars is based on, there's 2 themes, I reckon, not just the one, 2 themes. Violence and retribution and vengeance, like vengeance and retribution. So she gets her shit together. She survives. She does a bit of sleuthing and she finds out it's not just this big rapist that happened onto her by chance. I mean, think about it. Who the fuck led her down that shortcut in the first place? And there's so much to it. And she gets home and she gets on her Google and she's looking stuff up and she's doing sleuthing and she's ringing people. And she gets her fucking gun, which she used to take to the driving range and practice. So she's a fucking good shot. And her gun, she calls it the lemon squeezer. I forget the size of the gun. I think it's a 38 revolver, 5 bullets. You know me, I'm from Western Australia. We don't really fucking have guns here, man. Which I'm thankful for. Keep your fucking guns. But she goes on a mission to get retribution. Now, that'll do. Because that's enough for you to want to read this story. It's a really good book. A quick mention of the movie. It's like a Lifetime movie. I'm pretty sure it even aired on Lifetime. Big Driver. Now, this is an R-rated, horrible, fucking mental, violent story. And they made it a Lifetime movie. I suppose it's about a woman getting abused and stuff, so I get it. This deserved an R rating. Maria... I always get her name wrong. Maria Bello, I think, plays her in the movie. I watched it once and I just wasn't fussed. It didn't have that. I didn't want to see any rape scenes or anything, but I did want it to take itself seriously. Which I just don't think it just had the power. You know, for something like this, it needed to be done with a firm hand. Probably not Rob Zombie, but you know, maybe someone else. But don't bother with the movie. It's average, man. It's average. So read the book because it's great. Now, there's a bit at the end where Tess is talking to another sexual abuse survivor, another woman, and they're having this discussion. And I'm not going to say what happens, but there's just this one bit where this abuse survivor mentions what happened to her from her stepdad as a little girl. And, you know, not so much the sexual abuse, but the fucking violence part. And it's like 2 sentences. And it's fucking too much for me. Like, it's fucking heavy, man. And but the thing is, that's what's fucking happening all over the world. Like you need to know, you need to protect people, and people need to stop hurting people. But the end conversation is so well written, so developed, but just punches you right in the heart with a 5-finger death punch. Just with how brutal the stuff is that happened to this woman. And by then you're done. You just want Tess to get on with her life, which thankfully a page later the story ends. So that's it. That's done. Thank God. Big Driver by Stephen King. Read it, but read it with the lights on and be prepared. It is very, very heavy. Now, just a quick shout out to my little nephew Liam, who painted Jason Voorhees for me. He's 8 years old, man, and how good is that Jason? It's just the best thing ever. He knows how much I love horror, and so he painted that, and he loves Jason too. So he painted that for me. Now, all day long, if I had a paintbrush and paper after paper after paper, I couldn't draw Jason that good, man. I can't draw a fucking stick figure. But that is amazing. That deserves props. Thank you, little Liam. You are the man. That's my nephew's name is Liam as well. So that's it. So I'll leave it there. Read some good books. Watch some even better fucking movies. And don't take any shit from anyone. See you later.